Hello everyone, and welcome back from the brief Part 9 hiatus into the latest Chapter 25 review and discussion titled Lame Shibane's Investigation. So surprised to see this chapter was a bit shorter than usual, coming in at just 31 pages, although still a decent bite of content to chew on, that progresses this whole public servants arc and gives us a new perspective, finally getting away from Howler and his yacht, and seeing developments with Ningbo and Lame Shibane, who had kidnapped Meryl May at the end of the last chapter. And now it's all up to Pako and Usagi to save her. And this is a duo that we really haven't seen team up yet in the part, which gives us a new dynamic for our main cast this chapter and for the fight going forward. So getting right into it, starting with some extra art, JoJo Lens does feature on the cover of this month's Ultra Jump, although nothing too noteworthy with Jodio just doing his put your hands up pose for the 100th time, although I couldn't help but notice that his one eye is ever so slightly bigger than the other, which makes him look kinda crazy. But I do mess with this like rouge red aquamarine color palette. I never would have imagined those would go well together, but of course, Araki pulls it off. And something I notice is that whenever Jodio is drawn, it's often with two themes, rain and plants. Sometimes both, which really makes me think of his counterpart, Giorno. Could be referential to Life Giver, as sometimes it looks like Jodio's rain is nurturing and growing the plants. Just something that could symbolically connect the two, but not really relevant. This cover is a fraud. Jodio's not even in the chapter this month. So on the actual chapter cover, we have Ningbo and Lame Shibane with some promotions as usual, like the new Rohan manga volume, Rohan Jump magazine, JoJo magazine, which Rohan is also on the cover of, and Rohan's new movie. I swear, this character is getting more content than an RGG fan. And then we just have an acknowledgement of the Steel Ball Run anime, which, as we of course know, is officially in production and coming soon. Turning the page, we are welcomed into the chapter with not a double-page spread. It's been a while. But a familiar setting of Oahu leading to the Iko Iko boutique, where we then see at the back entrance of the shop is Pako and Usagi, who had quickly come over from the school. And right at the start here, we see Pako display Dark Determination, the first instance of this in Part 9, which is a defined mechanic in the world of JoJo when a character's eyes burn with fire, and is meant to signify an enhanced emotional state and willingness to kill without hesitation. So we saw in Pako's flashback how he met Meryl and how she helped him out of a bad situation, but now with Dark Determination, this gives us an even better idea of how important their relationship is. Because until this point, you could be like, yeah, maybe like Meryl is just an employer to Pako, someone who gave him an opportunity, but now we see he cares actually much deeper for her. Because as we saw in Part 7 and 8, the Dark Determination isn't just something you can feel towards an enemy or a result of pure anger, but it can come about through feelings of anxiety, which identify one's resolve and almost highlight what is important to them. When Yasuo went missing, it triggered in Josuke, and when Kato was having a picnic with her family, she experienced the phenomenon after being reminded of Jobin's rock disease, signifying that she would kill to protect him. So in the upcoming encounter, we should see Pako fight with a whole new level of intensity. We then get a scene of Pako comforting Usagi, who is much more overcome with sadness than anger by the situation, and shows us that his relationship with Meryl is much like the rest of the crew. He had no one, the world turned its back on him, and it was only Meryl who believed in him and gave him an opportunity. But since Usagi is a more emotional character, he's focusing on what his life would be like if he lost her, highlighting the contrast between these two. And in an effort to console Usagi, we almost get like a Fuko moment, where Pako gives it to him straight and is like, hey, really, our whole relationship, the reason we're doing all of this is purely to make money. That's what brought us together, so if you want to quit or leave, that's okay, and there's no shame in that, because in about 2 minutes we're gonna go fight some police officers, and that's gonna change the whole trajectory of your life. And there's one specific line from Pako that I love here, and he says, "Either way, know you'll have good friends one day," which is essentially telling Usagi he's a good person and will be able to find happiness on either side of the law, but if he chooses to go down this path, Pako will be there to back him up. And it's through these affirmations that Usagi is able to find his resolve and presses on forward for Meryl's sake, even keeping her fingers nice and cold, and grabs a gun from Pako's car to make up for his stance weakness, so he means business here. And one of my predictions for this fight is that at some point, the Mate Kudasai will duplicate a gun. I think that's a cool idea, how the objects duplicated will sometimes have like the stance eyes or like a weird shape. I think a stand gun that Usagi could make would be awesome. We then switch scenes to inside the boutique, where Ningbo and Lame Shibane have brought Meryl, because back at the school, they were able to interrogate her broke her fingers off obviously, and get her to admit that she was working with the kids and that Iko Iko was their hideout. So we see the two searching around for any hints or clues to their objective, which was to find and retrieve Lulu as well as to identify the enemies. And a cool aspect for this fight so far is the inclusion of guns, which isn't super common in JoJo, but is kind of essential for the setting that Araki's trying to capture here, with the overall tone being a crime heisting drama, and now we're literally fighting against cops. So it feels like a new vibe for JoJo's storytelling, seeing these guys clear rooms with a pistol and machine gun while also using their stands, but it's not like before where you have a stand that is based on a gun or is a gun, like a whole horse or a Bobby Jean. It's that we have stands plus guns now, more like how Funny Valentine chose to fight. And we have got to talk about Ningbo's gun for a second. He's got like the fully kitted out Escape from New York, Snake Plissken, Negan style modified Mac 11 with the silencer, scope, and everything. So if there's any gun nuts out there, is this based on a real thing? Is this a real firearm, or is this just like an Araki concoction? But on the topic of Ningbo, we also got to see more of his stand's inflation power to easily break open a locked door, and a video of what happened at the school when Meryl got her fingers blown off. And it looks just like a Killer Queen style power, where whatever Ningbo touches, he can inflate with air, causing it to quickly blow up. Pretty simple ability at a glance, but I really think that's what you want sometimes in this style of story. For example, in the earlier parts, more often than not, you'd have one stand that would be the set piece for an entire arc, and we would spend chapter upon chapter learning and navigating its ability. Superfly, Man in the Mirror, Dragon's Dream, there's plenty of examples, where in all of those arcs it was very much ability foreground, story background. But in the later parts, like part 9, you may notice it's shifted more towards story foreground and stands not completely, but more so being supplementary in the background. And this is something Araki got really good at in Steel Ball Run, and made JoJo feel even more storyline driven than it was before, and less villain of the weekish. So I guess a better way to describe it than one aspect taking focus over the other is simply that the series became more balanced, and there was a harmony struck between the action and the plot. And I think that's why in the alternate universe, sometimes we do see very simple stands that we can understand just by seeing them used, and don't need to take up, half a chapter explaining their abilities. So I really don't mind the simple stands as long as the plot is moving along and they're being used. So coming back into the chapter, we see that Lame Shebane is continuing her interrogation on Meryl, using her nematode-based stand to suss out the truth, as they are reacting to Meryl's pheromones, sensing levels of stress and such to determine what questions she finds unsettling and what answers are truthful. And that's a pretty useful stand for a cop, that eventually leads them to discover a hidden panel under the carpets. Although before we open it, Meryl goes for the bribe tactic, as in this world it seems everyone is motivated by money, and if the crew are able to pull off this heist successfully, they'd be able to offer these cops way more money than whatever Howler is currently paying them. Which is an interesting angle to consider. If all of these minor villains are just hired hands, why wouldn't they work for the highest bidder? And if we're stealing Howler's money, why not just have everyone turn against Howler and then everyone gets his money? Although something we saw earlier in the story made it seem as if these public servants have a vested interest in Howler maintaining control. So the continuation of the status quo and Howler's fingers and all the pies could be more valuable than whatever Meryl is offering. And possibly Howler being taken out of control could be devastating. But there is a split second where these two seem excited by the prospect of all of Howler's money and what could be, although they don't really consider it or believe that Meryl has the power to do that, so they just go ahead and open up that hidden door, revealing Lulu and Yokohama. And seeing Lulu in an underground bunker just reminds me of Tsurugi, but also because Araki drew her looking exactly like Tsurugi here for whatever reason. Maybe it's just to make her look less scary and less intimidating, as she really isn't in the villain role anymore. Rather, she looks quite content under Meryl's watch with toys and books and snacks. But it's at this point where things start to get pretty dicey, as not only did they find Lulu, but they also recognized Yokohama from Dolphin Bank. So if at any point either of these characters are able to contact Howler, that blows the cover for Jodio's side of things on the yacht and Charming Man's whole disguise, which would set back their entire plan. And the chapter then concludes with Paco going in for an attack, causing Ningbo to spray some bullets at the door, but manages to get an upper hand using the hustle to attach himself to the ceiling. So no hiatus next month, we will have a June chapter and get into the thick of this 2 versus 2 stand fight. So overall, very enjoyable chapter, fast paced I felt, and sets things up nicely. And I'm looking forward to the potential mix-ups during this encounter. As displayed in this chapter, Ningbo and Lame Shebane are very competent opponents who aren't going to go down easily, so it would definitely be a struggle. And I hope to see if maybe Lulu or Meryl will step up to help the boys out. And this could be Lulu's chance to fully switch sides. I could totally see Araki doing something where Usagi and Paka are overpowered, they're on their last leg, but then boom, pulmonary edema from Ninbo and Lame Shibame. It's like, oh shit, Lulu's actually helping us. So let me know what you guys thought about the chapter, of course, and any predictions you may have going forward. And thank you all so much for watching this chapter review. Please drop a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you all real soon in a new video. Until then, I am out. Peace.